Araceli, you're a tough act to follow, so I'm going to do my best. The beauty of being the last one on the panel is that obviously there's been such great information shared. But I'm going to invite you to, I'm coming to this problem from a different perspective. I'm coming from the vantage point of what are minority businesses facing when it comes to access to capital. And unfortunately, access to capital continues to be the #1 impediment. The #1 impediment. Now, why is that? Could be many reasons. Could be that our minority-owned firm owners are too busy doing the business and have not acquired the accounting services that they need to keep their financial records in order. That's one possibility. But there are many other possibilities. Could be institutional, could be structural, could be policy or regulatory. From where I stand as the National Director of the Minority Business Development Agency, it's my job to leverage my colleagues in the federal government to figure out this problem. I agree that our agency is celebrating its 45th anniversary. It was an outburst or an outgrowth of the civil rights movement. And indeed, economics was that component that sometimes we fail to remember. It was the economic opportunities of minorities in this country. We were created to ensure that minorities were included in the economic fabric of our country. Fast forward 45 years, I will say that if this nation is to continue to be globally competitive, it must support and strengthen the growth of minority businesses. There are 5.8 minority businesses throughout the country. They're growing at a very fast pace, particularly minority women businesses. And even if you go even deeper, Latina-owned businesses. But the growth of the creation of the business is not what we're looking not what we are focused on exclusively. We're also focused on the rate of growth. Many of our businesses have 1 to 2 employees, and I would say that the growth is what's going to contribute to the potential of creating more jobs. So capital continues to be the #1 impediment, and the question that we are posing, and I'm glad to know that there's an economist on the panel, that there's a researcher on the panel. We are conducting much more research within our agency to really fine-tune the answers to this question. And I'll tell you, when the Security and Exchange Commission put out their request for comments, MBDA made sure that people in our network provided comments back on the crowdfunding issue. Right? Crowdfunding, everyone's talking about crowdfunding, but very few people take the time to comment when there's a rule or regulation that's being proposed. So we want to encourage more of our businesses, more of our stakeholders, the Hope Foundation, the NAACP, the Urban League, to be engaged so that we are not left out. So at the creation of the policy, we want to be there. We're also working with the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department has the Minority Bank Program. As we mentioned before, we need to strengthen those banks. If you look at where minority banks are located, they're located within our communities. We need to make sure that they have the wherewithal as well as the support to ensure that they are lending, continue to exist, and that they continue to lend to our communities. Angel investors, looking at alternative financing. Let's not just go with the traditional bank, but other alternative financing for our minority businesses. There's family offices as well. When you look at the demographics, and every one of you know, the demographics tell us a very interesting story. And that story is that this country will look more like us in the next coming years. So again, I will repeat what I said at the beginning. If this nation is to remain globally competitive, it must leverage the diversity, especially the diversity within its business community. As the daughter of a business owner in the Bronx in the 1970s, I saw how my father started a business where no one else saw possibilities. And we see that happening. We're working with the city of Detroit. Detroit will come back without a doubt. The question we have is, will it come back with the entrepreneurs, that have stayed there and have struggled there and see the future of Detroit. So we want to make sure that as our cities continue to be revitalized, that we remain an integral part of that fabric. I've lived in the District of Columbia for 21 years, and I've seen the changes in this town. I would like to see more minority-owned businesses anchored within our cities. So I know that there's going to be a portion on solutions, which I hope to share more with you. But I will leave you with this. Our agency has 44 centers around the country. We work as a national network of centers, and we do three things: access to capital, access to contracts, which obviously this panel is not touching on, but we need to talk about access to contracts, and access to markets. The last point, the access to market, 95% of the world's consumers live outside of the United States. Minority-owned firms are twice as likely to export because of linguistic and cultural ties. We need to look at those opportunities as well. So again, I come to this panel from a very different perspective, but we share the same challenges: access to capital. And I will tell you this: I am very hopeful, but sometimes I feel that we are pushing the rock up the hill and it just keeps on rolling down. What we need to do is precisely what this panel is about: to put roadblocks so that the rock doesn't fall as fast, but that we can actually make some strides. And I think that the stakeholder relationships that we have, not just at the federal level, but at the state and local level, is critically important. And I also ask, next panel, bring some of my colleagues from the Treasury Department. I'll leave you with that.
I actually have a